Hey everyone, Dr. Frunkey here with a special knife consultation for you today. I'm going to start here with my Gavko knives shrunk trasher. So Michael Gavko is a custom knife maker. You can go back on my channel and check out my unboxing video for this, as well as a plainer version of the shrunk trasher. I'm a big fan of his designs. I'm very fortunate to have this full custom in my collection. But as many of you are aware, full custom knives are often quite expensive. And so makers will go and make mid-tech or production versions of their knives. And today I happen to have two versions of the same knife from Michael Gavko. So I'm going to go ahead and put the trasher away. In today's video, we're going to talk about the spinner. So Mike also makes a custom spinner, and it looks a lot like these knives. And so these two knives are made by two different companies, but they're adaptations of the same design. And so you can see right away some very striking similarities. Up top, we've got the Custom Knife Factory spinner, and below this is the Ferrum Forge Knife Works. This one is made in Russia / maybe China partially, and then this one is made in the US of A. This is maybe more of a production flipper, and then this one is more of a mid-techy sort of a deal right here. So both of them are going to be coming in at similar price points. I believe this one is somewhere around the $425 to $450, and then this one is hovering somewhere around there, maybe a little bit higher depending on the spec that you chose. This Ferrum Forge I don't think is still available, brand new. Perhaps some of these are actually available on the Gavko shop online, the Gear Bastion shop that he's got set up, so go and check that out. But I thought that bringing these two knives out for a one-time video was probably the best idea. They're so similar, and I think that it's very important for us to establish which one of these someone might prefer. And so let's go ahead and break out the old ruler, and we'll figure out what we're looking at here. So both of these knives, being that they're the same knife, essentially have very similar overall measurements. The actual blade is about 3.75 inches on the Custom Knife Factory, with a cutting edge of about 3.6 inches. You can see here on the Ferrum Forge they chose to go with a very large finger choil rather than a small sharpening choil. That does allow you for some extra grips, and we'll get into that. But the blade, the cutting length is only about 3 inches on this, so you sacrifice a little bit there. But the overall blade length is still about 3.75 inches back to the handle there. Back to the pivot, both knives are coming in right at about 4 inches. The handles are somewhere that's sort of important to differentiate here. The handle length on the CKF is exactly 4.5 inches, and on the Ferrum Forge, it's under 4.5 inches. So a slightly smaller handle on the Ferrum Forge. They've done a better job managing the efficiency of space here. That does actually translate into some ergonomic differences, and we'll talk about that as well. In terms of the overall weight of these two knives, the Ferrum Forge is not internally milled and just a little bit heavier for that reason. This one is coming in at 4.59 ounces. Not terribly heavy, honestly, for a knife of that size. This one is 4.27 ounces, so a little bit smaller, but it is noticeable in the hand. Both of these knives have similar profiles in the pocket. The CKF comes in at 0.46 inches in thickness, and the Ferrum Forge is 0.51. So the Ferrum Forge is a little bit more robust in that dimension. The titanium is a bit thicker, and again, not milled, so a little bit more robust on there. The blades, let's talk about these. The blade on the CKF is done in M390 steel, which you can see written right there. It's done with an acid stonewash on the secondary bevels, a satin finish on the flats, and it's done as a flat ground sort of tanto-ish shape right there. Both of them have the sort of harpoon, sort of clip point appearance to it right there, and I do like that a lot. Both of them have these very prominent holes that are actually milled remarkably similarly. The Ferrum Forge actually is done in a hollow grind, which is actually a strong preference of mine. A much nicer slicer overall, and it's done in 20 CV steel. The 20 CV coming out of Ferrum Forge is excellent, excellent stuff. If you watch any of Elliot's knife videos on his YouTube channel, he's extremely scientific about the way that he develops his knives, from the stop pins to the blades to the pivots and everything. Extremely scientific about all of it, and so I like that. And also his cutting performance is very good. good. This one has adapted a bit more of a curvature, not a straight tanto point, but also came very sharp. Both of these knives came extremely sharp to me, and I haven't tested full-on sharpenability and sort of long-term use, but I'll have to leave that up to you. This is going to be mostly a discussion about the ergonomics and the aesthetics going on and which one might be best for you. Both of these run on ball bearing pivots. I will say that the CKF's action is unbelievably smooth. It actually drops shut much, much smoother. This is going to be my biggest point of contention with the Ferrum Forge knife, and that's the Hoback rolling detent. I somehow managed not to mention the Hoback rolling detent on my Quieback review, but this is a detent system that you can see right here that actually is tunable. And so there's a little screw here on the outside of the knife. You take your little T6 right here, and you can stick that in there, maybe, eventually. And you can actually see on the inside of the knife that the detent will change its position. It'll go in and it will go out, depending on how you twist it. And the thought behind that is that you can tune the detent on your knife to exactly where you want it to be. In my experience, the Hoback rolling detent is a complete waste of time. And this knife comparison is an excellent example of why. Now, I appreciate innovation in all forms. Thank you, Jake Hoback, for developing this system. But what I found is that there's really no compromise here. It's the worst of both worlds, because you have to, in order to achieve a detent that's snappy enough for you to get a good deployment, the detent ball has to protrude into the interface to the point where it hangs up on the blade as you're closing it every single time. Now, you can lessen that hang-up effect, but eventually you're going to get such a soft detent that it's only going to partially deploy. This one I've got tuned to where I want it to be. This is an example of a perfectly tuned detent from the factory. The detent is ideal, it is extremely snappy, and it does not get in the way when you're closing the knife. It just kind of naturally closes much more smoothly. I don't know how to explain that. There's no detent ramp on this to make that more smooth. It's just a perfectly tuned detent. This may be one of the finest detents I've ever experienced on any knife ever. Just listen. It's just a snappy sound. Listen as compared to the Ferrum Forge, which I have tuned in pretty tightly there. So they're both pretty good, but there's just an amazing accuracy and solidity to the detent on this, which makes me wonder, why do you even need to install an adjustable detent? The detent on this is perfect. No one is going to complain about this. There's no real reason to adjust it. I feel like it just gets in the way. Moving back to the handles, the slightly longer length on the CKF model does provide me a little bit of a better grip, although it's maybe not quite as comfortable as the rounded edges on the Ferrum Forge. I will say I do get a full 4-finger grip on the Ferrum Forge, but the end tapers a little bit more, and so it's a little bit skinnier in the back of my hand. There's a little bit more stuff to hold on to with the CKF, and my grip feels a little bit more secure. All of these sort of knurled patterns all around the sides are a little bit less comfortable on the CKF than they are on the Ferrum Forge, but that is sort of, personal preference right there. Both of them have excellent clips. It's a milled clip on the CKF, and it is a bent clip on the Ferrum Forge. Both of them work similarly well, an excellent amount of spring and retention. Nice short clip going on here. And neither of them ride particularly deep, and that's totally fine. I will say I prefer to have screws to hold on to when you're pulling it out of the pocket, so I do like that. The construction is a standoff construction on this particular Ferrum Forge spinner. There are a lot of different customization options that are going on there. Speaking of which, this one from CKF only comes in one configuration, and this one from Ferrum Forge comes in hundreds of different ones. There are all these different customizations that happened, and different models and makers models and all these kinds of things. So at the end of the day, which one am I going to pick? Well, I think that the blade on the Ferrum Forge is better. I think that the handle fits me a little bit better on the CKF, and I think that the detent on the CKF is a little bit better without that Hoback rolling nonsense. So, but I will say that there's an extra grip here. Really, this is a wash. I'm just going to say both of these are great knives. I'm not going to pick one over the other one. I wanted to highlight the little differences here. Why don't you guys tell me what you think down below? Do you have one of these or both of these? Tell me which one you prefer. Maybe I can make another follow-up video to this if you really want me to, but go ahead and click like and subscribe to my channel. Tell me what you think of these. Follow me on Instagram at Dr. Frunkey, and as always, guys, take care.